Hello and welcome to this TES web chat. Apologies for the late start, but traffic has been brought to a standstill here in Dorset, and I'm delighted to be able to introduce you to the reason why. On National Poetry Day, it's a pleasure to introduce rhymer extraordinaire Julia Donaldson. Hello.
Hello, I didn't even know it was National Poetry Day. I'm
Did
ashamed
you not?
to say sorry.
Well, Julia is the author of a staggering 157 books, including The Gruffalo, The Gruffalo's Child and Room on the Broom, some of which we'll be asking her about today. She is also the current Children's Laureate, I believe, and a passionate advocate for literacy and the Save the Libraries campaign. And it's actually Save the Libraries that I'd like to kick off with. We've got a question from Maximus, aged 8, and just to warn you, this stumped Anthony Horowitz in a chat last week, so no pressure.
Well, I've just been signing for 3 hours, so my brain's feeling a little bit addled. I'm just used to saying, "What's your name?" And anyway, I'll do my best.
He says, what would be a good slogan to get people to come into the library?
What would be a good
slogan?
Oh gosh. Bribery, something about bribery, you know. Lollipops and bribery come to the library.
That lollipops would definitely get me in. And how's the library campaign going so far?
Oh well, brilliantly. I'm on a tour. You know, I'm on a tour from John O'Groats to Land's End. Well, I've been from John O'Groats to Land's End, and now I'm on my way back to Glasgow.
Wow.
So I've been visiting lots and lots of libraries, and so that means I've been able to do interviews here and there and everywhere, so which I hope will just draw attention to the, you know, how great libraries are, but also to the plight of quite a lot of libraries.
Yeah, and Cheryl asks, what can mums and parents and teachers do to get involved with the campaign and support it?
Well, there's not really just one campaign. I mean, you know, and some authorities are doing really well, and others not so well. Well, obviously, using the library is very important, and there are, when you mention mums, well, there are fantastic, you know, rhyme time sessions that go on for toddlers in libraries, and then in the holidays there's the summer reading challenge where you read about 6 books or have 6 library visits over the holidays. So I think using your library, and then if your library is under threat, then obviously find out what's going on, sign petitions, chain yourself to the railings, you know, whatever.
And Olivia, Lauren, Holly and Katie from Primary School, who I believe may be watching, wants to know, how old were you when you first discovered your love of books?
When I first discovered...
Your love of books.
My love of books. Well, I can answer that quite easily, because when I was 5, my father gave me a big fat book of poems called The Book of 1,000 Poems, and I absolutely loved that book, and I learnt lots of the poems, and I decided I wanted to be a poet when I was growing up.
And how can school librarians make their school library a place that really inspires children and that pupils want to come to?
Well, I mean, I think most school librarians know how to do that. The trouble is the school librarians have been cut. There aren't nearly so many school librarians, and that's another thing we need to fight for. I think just in schools where you haven't got a librarian, which is the majority of primary schools, you know, try and create a library. You know, sometimes I've been to schools where they've made an old cloakroom into a library, even if it's quite small, and children bring in books, and you know, you have sessions where children talk about their favourite books, and you know, it doesn't have to be just a collection of books. It can be events and readings, and inviting authors in is a good thing as well, to meet children.
Okay. And how can teachers get hold of you? How can they invite you?
They can't really. They can maybe if they're very near Glasgow where I live, but even then I'm quite booked up, because you see what I'm doing, visiting these libraries, I am meeting lots and lots of school children. Every library I visit, a class of school children comes in and performs a picture book story to me, and that's something I'm really keen on. And I've actually got a new website called www.picturebookplays.co.uk, which is all about turning picture books into dramas, acting out picture book stories. So I'm hoping loads of teachers and children can go on that website and tell their teachers about it. And I want teachers to log on to that website and tell us what they've been doing in their schools, if they've been acting out stories, you know, put pictures of their children acting out stories up there, links to YouTube, tips about how to act out picture books. I don't mean just my picture books, but anyone's picture books.
And you mentioned your book there, and we've had loads of questions in about you and your writing and your lovely books. Claire asks, what is the first step of being a successful children's author? Do you have any top tips about where to start?
The thing is, it's very different for every author. In my case, I was a songwriter before I became an author, but I couldn't say to everyone, be a songwriter and then you'll become an author. So I think just write a lot, read a lot, find out what's popular, you know, not to try and copy what's popular, but you need to be a bit in tune with the current, you know, trend. You can't just write something that's way very, very old-fashioned, say, you know.
Yeah. And Isabel Cassidy, who's age 8, and also year 3 and 4, the whole of year 3 and 4 from Lower Farm School, would like to know where you get your inspiration for your stories and your characters.
Well, lots of people ask that, but you see, it's different for every book. But I will say that I find the bath is a very, very good place for, you know, if you've got a germ of an idea, you're wallowing in the bath and kind of more ideas come to you. So I would say have a lot of baths. I know that's not very eco-friendly probably, but you know, I usually leave the water for my husband. He goes in after me,
quite
so
eco-friendly.
that's all right.
And we've had a couple of people actually pick you up on a couple of your books. Dan McGill says, why is it a mouse in the forest eating nuts when it could quite easily be a squirrel and that would make more sense?
Yeah, but it wouldn't rhyme with house, would it?
Very true, Dan. And Priorsford Primary School from Peebles in Scotland, it's class P3B, would like to know, in Tyrannosaurus Drip, the dinosaurs mentioned bridges not being invented yet.
Yes.
If they hadn't been invented, how would they know about them?
Well, it's a joke. Really.
And they'd also like to know, why did you decide to translate the Gruffalo into Scots? They thought it was very clever. Okay,
well, I didn't do that translation. A really good writer called James Robertson did it, because he, as well as being a writer, he's got a publishing company which just does books in the Scots language. So it is very clever. I can recite a little bit if you like. It goes,
go for it.
A moose took a donut through the deep milk wood. A Todd saw the moose, and the moose looked good, because a Todd is the Scottish for fox, and the owl is a hewlet.
That is very educational. Snake is universal. And Olivia wants to know how you write your stories. Do you ever write the end of the story before you write the beginning?
Yeah, that's good question. I do tend to have the whole story in my mind before I start to write. I wouldn't just start writing, once upon a time there was a mouse, and see what happens. I do know what the story is going to be before I start to write.
And Priya wants to know if you write your characters with a particular voice in mind, because she says that when her and her friends read your books, it's really funny because they have very similar accents and voices in their heads. Yeah,
well, lots of people tell me things like, one man said, "You do know the Gruffalo's Australian, don't you?" And, you know, I've heard kind of Scottish and Welsh and Irish, you know, I mean, it doesn't really matter. You can do it in any voice you like, really. But I do think the best people at doing the voices are usually the dads, I've found.
And I've got a question now from Class Julia Donaldson. Hello, Class Julia Donaldson.
Class Julia Donaldson, where are they then?
They're in year 2 in a school in Suffolk, and they chose to be named after you.
Oh, thank you.
And they've asked, why did you want to write books for children?
Well, actually, it just kind of happened. I started off writing songs for children. In fact, I started off going busking in the streets and taking a hat round, and then I started writing songs for children's television, and then one of my songs, called A Squash and a Squeeze, was made into a book. So I kind of was invited, really, you know, that I was drawn into the world of books. But then, I suppose, you know, I do love books, and I used to love reading to my own children, so I was very, very happy that it had gone in that direction.
And Charlotte from Primary School, and also Kira and Olivia, who are aged 9, they all love the Gruffalo, and they'd like to know which is your favourite character and which is your favourite book.
Okay, well, my favourite book is not the Gruffalo, because I just get a bit sick of the Gruffalo. Sorry for those people who like it. I do like the Gruffalo, of course I do, but right, my favourite character actually isn't in any of the picture books. My favourite character is called Princess Mirabelle, and she's in some chapter books, and she's a girl who comes out of the mirror. She's another girl's reflection, and she's very kind of boastful and a bit naughty, and tells all these stories about her life in Mirrorland. So she's my favourite character. I think maybe my favourite book is another slightly older one called The Giants and the Joneses, which is another chapter book.
Oh, lovely. And Jacqueline Davis, I'm sorry to go back to the Gruffalo, but she wants to know. She wants to know: will there be a third book? Will it be a trilogy?
Well, I'm not ruling it out. I did think about the Gruffalo's granny, but at the moment there's no immediate plans.
Okay. And Class 8 at Holy Trinity in Margate asks you which book that somebody else has written would you most like to have written yourself?
Oh gosh. Well, of grown-up books, I would have liked to have written a book called To Kill a Mockingbird, and maybe I do love The 101 Dalmatians, and I love Watership Down. I think those two.
And Ruby at SPJS and Madeline and Bradley from Primary School would like to ask who inspires you and who's your favourite author who's not yourself?
I suppose in a way I've kind of answered that. I could To Kill a Mockingbird, you know, that's by
Harper-Lee.
That's at Harper-Lee. That's the only book she ever wrote. And who inspires me? I think perhaps, you know, when I was a little girl, my granny used to read me a lot of Edward Lear poems and Lewis Carroll. So a lot of poets. Even Shakespeare, I think, has inspired me.
And we've had quite a lot of questions in, including from Ruby, from SPJS, and also Olivia, who want to know a bit about your writing habits. So we heard about Roald Dahl, for instance, a couple of weeks ago, about him having only writing on yellow paper. And Anthony Horowitz told us last week that he writes with a skull on his desk. So do you have any sort of bits and bobs that you feel you need to write? Well,
I tend to do lots of writing in my head, as I said, either in the bath or when I'm walking along. You know, I find just movement, or even when I'm swimming in the swimming pool, you know, sometimes ideas come to me. Otherwise, I don't really have I do have a special place in where I've got a study, but I could write on the train, I could write in a friend's house, I could actually do it anywhere. And I have such a busy life that I often do have to fit it into odd moments.
But it sounds like you're best when you're wallowing in some sort of water.
I think so, yeah.
And Year 2 at the Dingle Primary School wants to know if you've ever made a mistake while writing a book, or any that you'd like to admit to.
Oh, I'm sure I've made lots of mistakes, but of course most books get edited. You know, I've had to make lots of changes to my books. For instance, my new book, Superworm changes his shape a lot, you know, and I had a whole verse where he did a belly dance, and I really liked that verse, but the editor said, Julie, it's a bit too long, you know, it's going to be too many pages, the story needs to get going a bit soon, so quite often I have to cut things. They're not exactly mistakes, but you know, the story might be a bit too long, so I have to cut things out.
And a lot of your books are quite visual, aren't they? And Susan Darby wants to know if you visualise the characters, and if they're any different to how they turn out. How closely do they correspond with the picture in your head?
They're often very different. I mean, with Room on the Broom, I imagined a quite young witch, but a bit messy. And she ended up, the way Axel drew her, she was really old with a huge big nose with a wart on it, but quite tidy. So it was the opposite of what I'd imagined. I couldn't really say, Axel, don't do her like that, because I hadn't said that she had a little nose, you know, so why shouldn't he give her a big nose?
So you're happy to sort of let your
Well, I
illustrators
think it's
go?
fair enough. They're not breathing down my neck and telling me what to write, so I think they should be, you know, allowed to do what they want, more or less. Mm-hmm.
And we've got some questions in about rhyming, rather appropriately, as it is National Poetry Day. Is it difficult to use rhyme, and what's the longest time it's taking you to get it just right?
Well, the thing is, it's not that hard to find a rhyme, but it's very hard to get the lines the same length. So, for instance, if I said, once there was a bear, I wouldn't go, who was sitting on a very nice, cosy, comfortable chair, because that would be too long. I wouldn't say, once there was a bear, I would say once there was a bear, where, or something, because that'd be too short. So it's quite hard to, you know, actually get a good rhythm going.
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest part, and it does take a long time to get that right.
Well, thank you to years 3 and 4 at Lower Farm School for that particular question. And when you were saying it's quite easy to get a rhyme, you've been thrown a challenge by Olivia at SPJS. It's very specific. She said, can you think of a non-made-up word that isn't a proper noun that rhymes with cupboard? Over to you.
Oh, that isn't a proper name. Not offhand, sorry, I don't think I can. Right, can she?
Well, Olivia, you'll have to get in touch.
Maybe, you know, if you'd had 2 separate words, like cub could rhyme with hub, hub. Oh, yeah, sorry, I can't. If I hadn't been signing for 3 hours, I might be a bit fresh, I might be able to do it.
So you've managed to stump her, Olivia, so well done.
Rubbered. If something was covered in rubber, it would be rubbered.
There we go. From the jaws of defeat, you've snatched victory. And Ethan from I Primary School would like to know what hobbies you have besides writing.
Well, I play the piano. I'm very interested in mushrooms and toadstools. So at this time of year, I'm often out in the woods with a basket, you know, collecting fungi. I'm interested in wildflowers. I like walking in the countryside. I like singing. Is that enough?
That's plenty. Melissa wants to know if there are any plans, or have you considered making your books into audio or online interactive books for children who struggle with reading?
Well, there are lots of audio books anyway, but not interactive. But I've just written a whole lot of short plays, and some other authors have done them too, and they're going to be published in January, and they're fantastic. Well, what the publishers have done is fantastic, because these plays are all for 6 characters, but children, when they're at home, they can go online, they'll get the whole play and they can choose what part they want to act, and all the other voices will be read in. So, you know, if it was a play about, say, the 3 Billy Goats Gruff, you know, they could decide to be Little Billy Goat Gruff, and they'd hear all the voices of middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff and Big Billy Goat Gruff and the Troll, and they could just act Little Billy Goat Gruff, and then they could be the Troll. So I think that's going to be really good. They're called Plays to Read, and they're coming out in January.
Well, that sounds fun. I hope they're not just for children, because I quite fancy them myself. Isabel, aged 8, who's very, very observant, she says, in the Gruffalo's Child is carrying Stickman.
Yeah.
And were you planning the Stickman book?
Yeah, very good question. That was my inspiration for Stickman. I didn't have the idea of the Gruffalo's Child carrying that stick. That was Axel, the illustrator's idea. But seeing that, and also remembering how my own children loved playing with sticks, those 2 things together did inspire me to write Stickman. But was there another part of that question, or was that no?
No, that's. She just wanted to know if you were planning the Stickman book already. But you've answered that bit.
I often do think about doing another Stickman book. I think it's more likely I would do another Stickman book than another Gruffalo book, actually.
And Class 8 from Holy Trinity and James Hogg at I Primary School both have very similar questions. They want to know about you when you were small. So, when you were 7, what did you love the most, and what frightened you? Oh gosh, I suppose I loved
I love the countryside, actually, because I grew up in London. It's obviously a very big town, and in those days you couldn't often get out to the countryside, and we only went to the countryside about once a year, and I just loved it, and I can never understand why my own children don't go, oh, a cow, oh, a wildflower, because to me the countryside was magic. What frightened me, actually, my sister was much more frightened by things than me, and we used to share a bedroom, and she used to think there were wolves in the bedroom and things, and I had to often get in her, climb down from my top bunk bed and go in the bottom bunk with her to protect her from things like wolves in the bedroom. So I was quite brave. I wasn't frightened of that many things.
And years 3 and 4 Lower Farm School want you to look ahead. They say, what do you see yourself doing in 10 years' time?
What do I see myself doing?
In 10 years' time?
Oh, I just don't like thinking ahead, actually. I really don't like planning. In Egypt and in Arab countries, they never talk about the future without saying Inshallah, which means God willing. So I think if you make predictions about what you're going to be doing, I'm a bit superstitious, and I think I might suddenly be struck down by lightning, so I don't really think about the future. And
I'm sure there are a lot of children out there who don't want you to get struck by lightning.
No, well, I don't want to get struck by lightning.
Yeah, I'm sure it would be sad for you as well. I think that's all we've got time for, so all that's left for me to do is to thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you very much, and thanks to all the children for those brilliant questions.
They were brilliant, weren't they? You can join us again for another TES web chat next week. We've actually got 2, you lucky people. We'll be talking on Wednesday about Oxbridge admissions, and we'll also be talking to yachtswoman Ellen MacArthur on Thursday. So you've got 2 to look forward to. Get them in the diary, and hopefully see you there. Bye now.